The judge's gavel fell with finality, sealing Helena's fate. In that charged moment, her voice trembled under the weight of injustice, as the courtroom watched in silent disbelief. Then, suddenly, the heavy courtroom doors swung open, and time itself seemed to pause. In strode Miguel, not merely as a husband, but as a Supreme Court justice, whose commanding presence promised that true justice was only beginning. Helena Martinez sat upright in the defendant's chair, her modest navy dress standing in stark contrast to the opulent surroundings of the federal courthouse. At 34, her quiet dignity shone even in the face of baseless, fabricated charges that threatened to crush her spirit. The imposing mahogany panels and marble columns loomed over her like a fortress designed to intimidate those who did not belong. Judge William Crawford, renowned in legal circles for his merciless sentencing and deep political ties, regarded Helena with barely concealed contempt from his bench. His reputation for harsh justice had defined his career, yet few were aware of how selectively he applied that justice. Helena, a community advocate, had simply fought to save her beloved community center from demolition, a center that served as a safe haven for underprivileged children. Instead, she found herself entangled in a web of false evidence and obstruction charges. Earlier that day, Miguel had been called away to Washington for an emergency session, promising to return swiftly. Now, as the trial commenced, Helena clutched a worn leather journal, the only tangible link to her truth, and a silent weapon against a system determined to silence her voice. "All rise," the bailiff's command resonated through the room as Judge Crawford took his seat. His black robes billowed around him like gathering storm clouds. Helena, along with everyone else, stood with hands folded tightly in front of her. The clerk's monotone announcement of case number 207B, the state versus Helena Martinez, charging her with obstruction of justice and tampering with government documents, cut through the silence like a cold wind. "Miss Martinez, how do you plead?" Judge Crawford's voice was steely, his gaze fixed on Helena. "Not guilty, Your Honor," she replied softly, her tone steady despite the weight of every accusing stare in the room. The curious onlookers, the stern bailiffs, and most dauntingly the jury, whose faces shifted from boredom to suspicion. District Attorney Richard Vaughn, a man whose tailored suit and political ambitions were as polished as his rhetoric, rose from his seat. "Your Honor, the state moves to deny bail. Miss Martinez has shown blatant disregard for the law and poses a flight risk." His voice, crafted to sway opinion, contrasted sharply with the humble determination in Helena's eyes. Helena's court-appointed attorney, Mark Simmons, a young lawyer overwhelmed by the high stakes of the case, fumbled with his papers. "Your Honor, my client has deep roots in this community. She runs a children's center that supports over 200 families. She is not going anywhere," he argued. But Judge Crawford's lips curled into a smile that felt predatory rather than just. "Mr. Simmons, your client stands accused of falsifying documents to derail a property development project worth millions. A project that would have displaced dozens of families and shuttered her community center," he interjected. The prosecution called Regina Parker Vaughn to the stand, a composed, polished city planning commissioner in her 50s. "Miss Parker, please describe your interactions with the defendant," District Attorney Vaughn prompted. Regina adjusted her designer glasses and stated, "Martinez repeatedly interfered with the legal processes of city planning. When notified that the development had been approved, she submitted paperwork falsely claiming that the center was a historical landmark, with signatures we later found to be inconsistent." Her tone dripped with smug assurance, attempting to portray Helena as a rebellious troublemaker. Helena's cheeks burned with indignation. Those signatures were genuine, a testament from longtime residents, whose families had benefited from the center for generations. Leaning toward her attorney, she whispered urgently, but Mark Simmons only patted her hand dismissively. During a brief recess, whispers filled the courtroom. A court reporter confided to a colleague, "This is such a waste of time. Judge Crawford seems to have decided this case long before it started." Another voice murmured about how the development project was financed by Crawford's brother-in-law, suggesting that the trial was nothing more than a rigged performance. Helena's heart pounded as she discreetly sent a text from beneath the table, It's worse than we Judges compromised. Need you, Judge? Almost immediately Judge Crawford's voice boomed. Miss Martinez, surrender your phone immediately. This is a courtroom, not a social gathering. The bailiff stepped forward, and with trembling hands, Helena handed over her device. As the afternoon wore on, witness after witness recounted testimonies that felt too rehearsed, each piece of evidence crafted to paint Helena as a manipulative activist. With every statement, the jury's eyes grew colder, their expressions hinting that the case was already lost. At 4:00, as the judge announced an extension into the evening session, Helena sensed that the outcome was being hurried to a predetermined conclusion. Unable to contain her frustration, Helena spoke up. Your Honor, I request a brief recess to consult with different counsel. My current representation is inadequate. Judge Crawford's eyes narrowed dangerously. Miss Martinez, outbursts will not be tolerated in my courtroom. Sit quietly, or I will hold you in contempt, he declared. The final witness of the day was called, and just as the courtroom doors at the back clicked open, a ripple of anticipation passed through the gallery. Then the atmosphere shifted once more, when Miguel Martinez strode into the room. His presence in a tailored charcoal suit and with silver at his temples transformed the proceedings. The murmurs halted as he advanced down the center aisle. Your Honor, Miguel's deep voice resonated powerfully. I request permission to approach. His calm yet authoritative tone made it clear that he was not just Helena's husband. He was her advocate for justice. Recognizing the gravity of the moment, Judge Crawford hesitated before granting him a 30-minute recess. With every step Miguel took, the balance of power visibly shifted. The courtroom, once dominated by an air of predetermined judgment, now held its collective breath. Inside the judge's chambers, the tension was palpable. The imposing mahogany desk, once a symbol of unassailable authority, now separated a man whose composure was crumbling from one whose integrity had been steadfast all along. Miguel's measured gaze bore into Judge Crawford. Justice Martinez, he began, his voice calm and deliberate. Please explain why my wife is being railroaded with fabricated evidence. In response, Crawford fumbled for words, his earlier confidence melting away. Miguel then placed a leather portfolio on the desk. Within are 3 items: authenticated documents proving the historical status of the community center, affidavits from 7 local residents affirming Miss Martinez's ethical conduct, and financial records linking this development project to your personal connections through your brother-in-law. The judge's face drained of color. Helena watched with a mix of hope and trepidation as Miguel continued. You have a choice, Judge. You may recuse yourself immediately, citing a conflict of interest, or these documents will be sent directly to the Chief Justice by morning. Before Judge Crawford could respond, District Attorney Vaughn re-entered with a tentative smile that quickly faltered under Miguel's unwavering gaze. I thought we might discuss a resolution, Vaughn began, but Miguel cut him off sharply. Mr. Vaughn, your office's failure to disclose exculpatory evidence is not a misunderstanding, it's misconduct, and my wife will not be used as a pawn for your political ambitions. Miguel's words resonated in the hushed room. The judge, now visibly defeated, murmured, I will prepare my recusal. Vaughn, under pressure, acquiesced with a curt, I will file a motion to dismiss the charges. With that, Miguel turned toward Helena, his public facade softened as he reached for her hand, guiding her from the chamber. The courtroom watched spellbound, as Helena, once cornered and silenced, was led not back to the defendant's chair, but toward the exit, free at last. Judge Crawford's final words echoed. This court is adjourned, and moments later, all charges against Helena were dismissed with prejudice. Outside, as the courthouse steps filled with reporters and onlookers, Helena squeezed Miguel's hand. Justice looks different from this side, she whispered. Later, in the warmth of their modest suburban home, far removed from the marble corridors of the courthouse, they shared a quiet dinner. Miguel had loosened his tie and rolled up his sleeves, his demeanor now reminiscent of the compassionate man Helena had fallen in love with 2 decades ago. I never wanted to use my position to override your own merits, Helena said softly, breaking the calm between them. Everything I've done for the community center was for the families who depend on it, not to serve as a political pawn. Miguel's eyes, warm and resolute, met hers. Today was not about my title or my influence.
It was about exposing the truth in a system designed to hide it. You fought for those families with every ounce of your heart, and that is the truest form of justice. As dusk fell, and the last light faded, Elena felt a profound peace replace the day's tension. Tomorrow, she said with a hopeful smile, I'll go back to the center, and tell everyone it's safe again. Miguel squeezed her hand gently. Different battlegrounds, same war, he murmured, echoing their shared belief that real justice is found not in court victories, but in the dignity of standing for what is right, regardless of the cost. Their quiet resolve was a stark contrast to the corrupted corridors of power they had just left behind, a testament to the belief that even in a flawed system, truth and integrity can ultimately prevail.